April 15, 1945, Okinawa. The U.S. Navy was engaging in the largest amphibious assault of the Pacific War. But to protect the landing fleet, they needed a shield. They set up radar picket stations, lonely patrol circles 50 miles away from the main fleet. The job of a radar picket ship was simple: scan the sky, detect incoming Japanese air raids, and warn the fleet. But the sailors had a different name for it. They called it the bullseye. If you are the first ship the Japanese see, you are the first ship they kill. Radar Picket Station No. 1 was the most dangerous spot on the map. It was the closest to Japan. On April 16, the destroyer USS Laffey DD-724 arrived at Station 1. She was an Allen M. Sumner-class destroyer, 2,200 tons of fighting steel, twin 5-inch guns, 40mm Bofors, 20mm Oerlikons. Commander Frederick Julian Becton stood on the bridge. He knew the statistics. The average life expectancy of a ship on Station 1 was less than 24 hours. Becton looked at his crew. They were young, they were scared, but they were ready. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to command a ship through a level of punishment that physics said was impossible to survive. 0800 hours, April 16. The radar operator on the Laffey stared at his scope. Usually, you see a blip, maybe two. This time, the screen didn't show blips. It showed a solid green smear. "Captain, many bogeys, north and west." The Japanese had launched kikusui, floating chrysanthemums, mass kamikaze attacks. There were 50 Japanese planes heading directly for Picket Station 1. Aichi D-3A Vals, Yokosuka D-4Y Judys. 50 planes against one ship. Commander Becton sounded the general quarters alarm. Clang, clang, clang. Sailors sprinted to their battle stations. They put on flash gear, anti-flash hoods, and oversized steel helmets. They loaded the 5-inch magazines. The sky turned black with dots. Like a swarm of angry wasps, the Japanese planes circled the Laffey, looking for the best angle to dive. They weren't trying to drop bombs and leave. They were the bombs. 0830 hours. The attack began. A lone Aichi D-3A Val dive bomber broke formation. It dove from the sun, aiming for the Laffey's bow. This was where American technology met samurai spirit. The Laffey was equipped with VT fuses, variable time. These were secret radio proximity shells. They didn't need to hit the plane, they just needed to get close. The forward 5-inch guns roared, boom, boom. The shells exploded 50 yards in front of the Val. The shrapnel shredded the pilot's cockpit. The plane disintegrated in mid-air, splashing harmlessly into the sea 1,000 yards away. The crew cheered, one down, but the cheer died in their throats. 4 more planes peeled off and dove, then 2 more from the stern, then 3 from the port side. They were coming from all directions simultaneously. The sky was filled with tracers. The 40mm Bofors guns were pumping rhythmically, thump, 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 filling the air with walls of lead. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was a meat grinder. 0832 hours. A Yokosuka D-4Y Judy dive bomber used the smoke of the burning planes as cover. It came in low and fast on the stern, the back of the ship. The rear 20mm gunners saw it too late. They opened fire, ripping pieces off the plane's wing. But the pilot was dead, or determined. The plane didn't pull up. Crash. The Judy slammed into the mount of the aft 5-inch guns. The impact was sickening. The plane's engine block crushed the gun mount. Aviation fuel sprayed everywhere and ignited instantly. A massive fireball engulfed the rear of the ship. Commander Becton felt the ship shudder. He looked aft and saw a tower of black smoke. "Damage control, report!"
Before the report could come back, the second kamikaze hit.
0835 AH, hits 2 and 3. The Laffey was bleeding, but the Japanese weren't done. A WW dive bomber dropped a bomb perfectly on the stern, jamming the rudder mechanism. The rudder was stuck at 26 degrees to port. The ship couldn't steer. It was locked in a tight circle, like a wounded animal chasing its tail. Being stuck in a circle meant the ship couldn't dodge. It was a stationary target. Another WW crashed into the gun control director, hit number 3. This was critical. The brain of the ship was gone. The computers that aimed the big 5-inch guns were dead. The electrical cables were severed. Suddenly, the 20-ton gun turret stopped moving. The automatic loaders stopped working. The ship was blind, crippled, and burning. Becton grabbed the railing on the bridge. He didn't look at the fire. He looked at his gunnery officer. Go to local control. Manual override. 0839 hours. Hits 4 and 5. Without electricity, the 5-inch guns became dead weight. But the crews refused to quit. They switched to manual. This is brute force engineering. Sailors stripped off their shirts. They grabbed the manual cranks. It takes enormous physical strength to rotate a turret by hand. They were cranking the gears, sweating, muscles screaming, turning the guns inch by inch to track 300-mile-per-hour airplanes. A bomb struck the starboard side, hit number 4. Another kamikaze crashed into the deck house, hit number 5. The heat was so intense it peeled the paint off the bulkheads, but the manual gunners kept firing. One gun captain, seeing a plane coming straight for them, fired his 5-inch gun point blank. The massive shell hit the plane less than 100 yards from the ship. The explosion blew the plane apart, but the shock wave knocked the American gun crew unconscious. They woke up moments later and started loading the next shell. 0842 hours. Hit 6. An Oscar fighter plane approached from the port bow. It didn't dive. It skimmed the waves. It crashed directly into the bridge superstructure. Burning gasoline sprayed over the Combat Information Center, CIC. The ship's surgeon was killed. The communications officer was killed. The USS Laffey was now burning from bow to stern. It looked less like a ship and more like a floating volcano. A junior officer looked at Commander Becton. The situation was hopeless. The ship was sinking by the stern. The guns were failing. "Captain," the officer stammered, "should we prepare to abandon ship?" Commander Becton turned slowly. His face was blackened by smoke. He looked at the chaos, then looked at the officer, and delivered the most famous line of the battle. "No, I'll never abandon this ship as long as a single gun will fire." He didn't know it, but a gunner nearby heard him. The word spread through the smoke. The old man is staying, and if he stays, we stay. 845 hours. Hits 7 and 8. The big guns were mostly silenced. Now it was down to the last resort, the 20mm Oerlikon cannons. These are open-mount guns. The gunner is strapped into the weapon, completely exposed. No armor, just a man and a gun. A kamikaze came in so low it clipped the radio antenna. The 20mm gunners didn't flinch. They were strapped to their guns. They couldn't run if they wanted to. One gunner, firing at a plane coming straight at his face, kept the trigger down until the plane exploded 30 feet from him. The engine block of the plane skidded across the deck and decapitated the gun mount next to him. The gunner wiped the oil and blood from his goggles, reloaded, and swung his gun to the next target. The barrels of the 20mm guns were glowing white-hot. They were melting, but they kept shooting. 0847 hours. The sky suddenly changed. 4 U.S. Navy FM-2 Wildcats and F-4U Corsairs appeared from the clouds. The Combat Air Patrol, CAP, had finally arrived. But the chaos was so great that the Laffey's gunners couldn't tell friend from foe. They were shooting at everything that flew. One Corsair pilot, seeing the Laffey about to be hit by another kamikaze, did something insane. He chased the Japanese plane through the Laffey's own anti-aircraft fire. He flew into the wall of American bullets to shoot the Japanese plane off the destroyer's back. He shot the kamikaze's wing off just 50 yards from the ship. The Japanese plane tumbled into the water. The Corsair pulled up, barely missing the ship's mast. The Laffey was still floating, but just barely. 9:47 hours. The attack finally stopped. The last Japanese plane was shot down. Silence fell over the Pacific. Commander Becton walked the deck. What he saw was a nightmare of twisted steel and blood. The USS Laffey had taken 4 bomb hits and 6 kamikaze crashes. She had been strafed by bullets and rockets. The aft 5-inch guns were melted slag. The radar mast was gone. The deckhouse was gutted. The rudder was jammed at 26 degrees. Fires were burning in the magazines. Casualties? 32 men dead, 71 wounded. By all naval standards, this ship was dead. It should have been at the bottom of the ocean 30 minutes ago. But Becton looked at the waterline. She was riding low, but she wasn't sinking. The engineers were pumping water out faster than it was coming in. The heart of the ship, the engines, were still beating. The next morning, the Laffey was towed into the anchorage at Okinawa. She looked like a floating wreck, a ghost ship. As the tugs pulled her through the fleet, everything stopped. Sailors on battleships, cruisers, and carriers ran to the rails. They stopped working. They took off their hats. They knew what Picket Station 1 meant. They knew what this little destroyer had endured to protect them. A cheer started. Then whistles blew. Sirens wailed. The mightiest fleet in the world was saluting a broken tin can. Commander Becton stood on his ruined bridge. He wept, not for the ship, but for the 32 boys who weren't there to hear the cheers. While the ship was being towed, the medical drama continued below decks. With the ship's doctor dead, the care of the 71 wounded fell to a brave pharmacist's mate. He operated on mess tables. He used flashlights when the power failed. He pulled shrapnel out of men while standing in bloody water. This is the hidden cost of the ship that would not die. The steel survived because the flesh paid the price. When the inspectors came aboard later, one admiral looked at the damage and famously said, "I have never seen a ship take this much punishment and stay afloat. She is too tough to die." They said the Laffey was scrap metal. They said she would never sail again. They were wrong. The U.S. Navy repaired her. She didn't just survive, she went back to war. She fought in the Korean War, she served in the Cold War. She served her country for another 30 years. Why? Because you don't throw away a legend. Today, the USS Laffey sits at Patriots Point in Charleston, South Carolina. She is a museum ship. You can walk her decks. You can touch the scars in the steel where the kamikazes hit.
She is the only surviving Allen M. Sumner destroyer in North America. She is the last witness to the hell of Okinawa.
The deep male voice, calm and reflective, with a somber and emotional tone. The delivery should sound like a war documentary narrator, steady and heartfelt, as if he's remembering something painful but important. Each sentence should carry weight and sincerity. No dramatic acting, just quiet emotion, grief, and respect. The story of the USS Laffey isn't about armor plating or anti-aircraft guns. It's about a decision. When the fire was hottest, when the rudder was jammed, when the world was ending, Commander Becton said no. He refused to abandon ship. And because he believed, his crew believed. They proved that a ship is only as strong as the men who stand on her deck. If you ever visit Charleston, go see her. Stand where they stood. And if this story of American grit inspired you, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. We are keeping these stories alive. Because heroes never die. They just reload.